Welcome and thank you for joining us today for the future of workload automation and orchestration, driving digital transformation with orchestration and generative AI. My name is Raleigh Gould and I'll be moderating today's event. Our featured speaker is Dan Twing, President and CEO from EMA. Dan joined EMA in 2005 and has over 25 years of experience in information systems, software development, and technology outsourcing. He focuses on all aspects of intelligent and automated management of IT. While Dan will defer answering your questions until the conclusion of today's event, I wanted the audience to know that you can log your questions anytime using the Q&A functionality. Also, today's event is being recorded and you will receive a follow-up email from EMA with the on-demand playback, as well as additional information about this new research report. And I also encourage you to learn more about the sponsors. At that point, this is a great time to segue it over to Dan. Dan, take it away.
Great, thanks, Raleigh. Well, I want to begin by thanking the sponsors that made this research possible. Here they are. We had Beta Systems with their A Now product, of course, BMC and Control M, Broadcom with a Atomic and a host of other tools you all are likely familiar with, HCL Software, and Stonebranch. So thank you all. They contribute to the survey when we draft it. Many of these folks have been involved in a number of my surveys over the years. I think this is the 7th or 8th time we've really delved into this topic. There's a number of trending questions that we kept in the survey, but also there's quite a bit of new stuff this year around with observability, orchestration, and AI, kind of taking the place of some of the questions that we had been trending for years that really have matured. Some of the stuff around multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, and whatnot, we're kind of leaning into an area now. So let's just get right to what were the big trends from this research. And I pulled out 5 things that I think are sort of key that's shaping really where workload automation and orchestration is heading in 2025 and beyond. Really, first, enterprise-wide orchestration is becoming the standard. And there's some interesting questions we asked for the first time around in here that we'll get to. But folks are shifting their mindset to that broader orchestration thinking and making that part of their strategy. Observability is the foundation for AI-driven orchestration, I think. What I'm really feeling is that if we're going to orchestrate a broader set of things, we have to have more awareness of what's going on, and we need to be able to take action. The AI aspect gives us the ability to make decisions along the way and take some automated actions. Observability gives us the data we need to do that. AI and WLA and orchestration is growing rapidly. AI in a number of areas is important, and we'll delve into that, both in really lowering the barrier to staff training to take advantage of these tools, to lower the barrier for others to take advantage of the tools, and to make the tools sort of more self-healing and self-managing. Cloud and multi-cloud integration is still a major focus. I don't spend a lot of time on that in this webinar or in the report, but that is still a major driver. And really, surrounding observability, you kind of see that first. Observability is even more important in the multi-cloud world, and those two kind of go hand in hand. So I think maybe some of the observability stuff really started to become more important because of cloud. Certainly, though, it will cross all of the environments. And then a look at business really driving new automation initiatives, end-to-end business process thinking beyond just IT automation. And we're starting to see the beginning of real citizen developers, although it's still relatively early in that front. So that's sort of the high-level view of what we're going to talk about. Real quick, we're just going to talk very briefly about the demographics. If you've been to any of my webinars on this topic in the past, we're surveying pretty much the same group here we've surveyed over the last 5 or 6 years. So a lot of IT execs, a lot of operations folks, and a mix of other individual roles with, you know, we got about 5% business executives in here. Overall, we probably have about 8 to 10% business folks, 90% are IT folks. And you can see the bulk of them are managers or directors, a good representation of C-level IT and business folks. And you know, individual contributors are really not highly included in this, but when you get into some of the architects, SRE roles, infrastructure engineers, those are the ones where we're down at the individual contributor level. Again, we looked across North America, Europe, and Asia, pretty equally covering those, roughly a third of the data from each. And again, the Asian countries, you know, Southeast Asia, we were in Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore, Europe, France, Germany, and UK make up Europe. And for North America, we're predominantly United States. There might be a couple of Canadians mixed in that came in through the US link, but you know, that's it, we pretty much are looking there. And then in terms of size of organization, we were really only looking at folks 500 employees and above. This has been standard in all of these studies. And you can see that, you know, we're pretty well represented in the large end of the market. 100 million to $1 billion in revenue is half of this study. Another 25% have $1 billion or more in revenue. So we're on the higher end of the market, but we certainly have the middle market well represented. So the first theme that I want to talk about is really that, you know, automation is continuing to rise in importance. And there's a couple of data points in here that I can show trends over time that just the thinking about automation, both from a productivity perspective, from a, you know, achieving things quicker when we have problems or in setup, helping people on board quicker when they start to come, you know, in access to these tools. For a number of different reasons, you know, we see just an increase in overall attention towards automation. It has a lot to do with the increasing complexity of the IT environments, the business environments, demand for operational efficiency, labor shortages and skill gaps are in some cases managed through, you know, adding in automation in certain areas. But really, automation has become essential for navigating the challenges and opportunities of a modern IT and business environments. And just to show, you know, how that's changing, we've been asking this question farther back than 2020. I've probably been asking this question over as much as, say, maybe 8 years. I showed the last 3 here. So we asked, our use of automation is growing rapidly. The biggest thing you can see here, if you look at the line chart, that went from 81% to 84% and from 2020 to 2022 and jumped another 4 points in 2024. We collected this data in late 2024. And 88% now are saying automation is growing rapidly in their organization. So it's, you know, it continues to increase. And if you look at the strongly agree on the left chart there, the blue is 2024. So you can see that, you know, 3 surveys running over the last 4 years or so, the strongly agree is consistently increasing. So, you know, we're pulling more and more people. They're not just agreeing with this, but we're seeing more and more who say strongly agree. I mean, there's just no doubt automation is important. Another metric that I've tracked, you've seen before if you've been to these in the past, is how are you as an automation or IT person or IT executive being measured towards automation? Is that something that expanding the use of automation is part of your personal objectives and measurements? And You can see here that it's currently at 44% in this last study. When I first asked this question in 2020, we had 31% who said they were being managed or measured by their, in part by increasing the scope of automation. And again, we see similar trend line where that just continues to rise. It's now the third metric in this list. I mean, successful job completion rates, SLA compliance, customer satisfaction, they're all there at the top as well. Successful releases, managing budgets. I mean, in this role, there's a lot of things you have to do, but certainly for almost half the market now, how you're achieving an expansion of the reach of automation is one of those metrics. And I think I started asking this question maybe even in 2018, but certainly by 2020, and in the 3 surveys since, really just how do you, in your role or feel about your organization's sort of posture or approach to automation? And I made up these 5 categories, which we've asked before, ranging from, we're old school. We tend to favor the status quo on the left chart there on the far left, to, we're slow to add automation. So that group together, I've shaded red. And when we look at the chart on the right, you'll see the red line there. I label them together, they're the old school, they're the slow group. They're not really driving automation. Then the middle group there, we tend to copy automation best practices developed by others. So about 15% of the market is sort of, we follow along, we're kind of laggards, but we see what other people are doing. Then you get to that 32%, the green bar, we're somewhat creative in our use of automation. To that blue bar, we're very creative in our use of automation. And you can see, in these results, most recently from 2024, we have a big block in those last 2 groups. When you look at the chart on the right, and we're looking at it over the last 4 years or so, you can see that the driver group, the blue group, is radically increasing, especially a big jump from 2022 to 2024. And really all of the others are declining. The mover group got a little bit smaller. And you can see the follower group is sort of dropping off. So we're converting. A lot of them are getting pulled in now to being even more creative with their automation. The old school group's pretty small, but even that's declining. So again, automation is no longer just a tool for efficiency. It's really becoming a strategic enabler for innovation and resilience in systems. And folks are leaning into that pretty heavily. A lot of what's driving that is the drive towards digital transformation. I think now we've asked this one a couple of times. This time I didn't show you the more detailed chart. So ahead of the chart on the left there, I actually asked a scale of like 11 different things, from I'm not doing anything to digital transformation. There's 3 categories that I lump into the early group and 3 I lump into the underway group. I didn't show that level of detail here. I got a lot of other data to get to, but when we summarize or collapse those together, you've certainly seen this chart before if you've been with me on other webinars on this topic. Today, the last study we got, 2024, we have now a bigger group in underway at 43% than we had previously. The early group was the biggest group. So you can really see we're maturing through this digital transformation effort. The mature group is also bigger at 27%. And so on the right side here, I'm sort of showing you the 2022 results along with the most recent results in 2024. And you can kind of see the maturity rippling through here. Early, it dropped from 40 to 28%. So, you got about 12-15% that moved ahead, because we also pulled up 2% from the not doing it at all group. And then many of them landed in the underway. That increased from 37 to 43%. And the mature group increased from 17 to 27. I don't know how really to explain the group that thinks they're, moving on to the next gen of digital transformation. I don't really define that. Leave that to their imagination. But Are you playing past what everyone else is talking about? In many ways, that could just be a statistical sampling anomaly. 3% is not a big swing, but also it could be that a few folks are really re-evaluating what it means to be looking at the next gen, and maybe they're resetting the bar a little bit. And maybe I'm only mature. I'm not really all the way there. AI coming on board is really sort of changing what we think is possible and what we think today looks like versus I'm really being futuristic. That's bending a bit because AI is giving us immediate capabilities that we maybe didn't factor in when I asked this question for the first time 3 years ago. So this time I asked, this is a new question, automation is a key driver of digital transformation, or how do digital transformation and automation efforts interact in your organization? And the group, it's a key driver, 37%. Automation and digital transformation are integrated, but automation serves as a supporting function, is the second biggest group there at 34%. And 21% said automation and digital transformation are distinct initiatives, but they're closely aligned. So, a lot of folks are really understanding the relationship here. And for some, it's more direct than others. But if we're driving hard on digital transformation and automation is linked to achieving that, and you saw in the previous slides how it's maturing, it really explains the increasing importance of automation. And here is a look where we sort of cross that data. So we have the groupings of where are you in your digital transformation from the none to early, underway, mature, and Gen 2. But the groups here are the dark blue is those who said automation is a key driver of our digital transformation strategy. And as you can see, the correlation there, the more mature they are in digital transformation, the more they leaned into leveraging automation to help them get there and achieve what their goals were. So in some cases, automation is part of the digital transformation. In other ways, it's just part of improving the process or speeding up the process of arriving there, as well as living with more automation once you're there. Digital transformation is bigger than automation, but the two are highly linked. And the more organizations, the more they think that that's linked, and the more they've managed themselves to have it linked to their digital transformation, really you can see the farther they've gone in that process. And we've had charts like this in the past too, where I've crossed this data with some other aspects. And there's just no doubt that those achieving the digital transformation are those that have leaned into workload automation and orchestration and other forms of automation more than others. And, not to beat the horse, but here's another data point with the same sort of slope. So we have asked this again, probably back to even maybe 2018. I'm showing just the last 3 studies here, but digital transformation is requiring more from our scheduling or workload solution. And I'll start on the right side with the line graph. You can see in 2020, 77% felt like we were really stressing their workload environment because of digital transformation. That continues to rise. And today, when I last asked this, 87% now, I mean, that's a 10-point jump in 4 years, are feeling that their workload tools, their scheduling environment is being, asked to do more as part of their digital transformation efforts. The two absolutely go hand in hand. They need more capabilities. Our sponsors of this study and other players in the market, they've stepped up. I mean, the products are there supporting these things, but this is a trend that right now doesn't show any amount of slowing down. I mean, if anything, it's increasing at an increasing rate. So how does WLA actually support digital transformation efforts? We have a number of responses here. The top 3 or 4, really those top 5 are all relatively close to each other. So first of all, it plays a critical role in cloud infrastructure configuration and cloud management right at the top. It supports DevOps processes and accelerating development and development cycles. So the automation being used to improve releases, release management, DevOps processes, even development, it helps there, and that infrastructure config. And then the third one is on-prem config. So, the top three, it makes my development faster, and it makes it easier to configure all of the different environments that I have to be involved in. It also automates release management. So, that top group is pretty, those top four are really highly interconnected with each other. But that's, the most common statements about how workload automation and orchestration specifically are helping with digital transformation. Beyond that, we leverage WLA extensively for file transfers. You remember last year, some of you may be aware of a study I did on managed file transfer and how data is moving. And we absolutely see an increasing role for the workload products because many of them have added the native transfer, and they're carrying 30–40% of the file transfer traffic now. WLA orchestrates and connects various digital transformation initiatives across the organization. So, specifically involved in how they deploy digital transformation. The bottom one is my favorite, but let's first pause on this group that says, about 30% still say, no, it's pretty much still just its traditional role. So, we only see about 70% that are really leaning into it this way. But as we showed earlier and in past research, that happens to be the very ones making the most progress with their digital transformation. So, it is highly advised to use this tool set, this class of software and automation to help you get there. But that last group did not move from 2 years ago, but I still think that we will ultimately see this last group moving, which is WLA provides end-to-end orchestration for multiple digital transformation processes. So, that 31%, three up from the bottom there, WLA orchestrates and connects various digital transformation initiatives. So it's playing an actual role there in connecting a couple of different, say, digital processes. But this bottom group, still only 15%, but they're actually driving major parts of multiple processes with the workload. I think we will see that number increase as AI and observability come to bear more and more on this tool set. We still have a lot of challenges here. I sort of varied from the chart. There were 3 questions, 3 different data points. I really just summarized them. As is often been the case here, security and compliance really rises to the top of most of those questions. Although for the first time in one of those questions, one of the 3 different challenges questions, so I asked it 3 different ways. How are you challenged by using or deploying the software? How about trying to use it for new processes? And the challenges, or what's holding you back from some of the new use cases, even though the vendors have added capabilities to the products, what's holding you back from taking advantage of those? So I asked it like 3 different ways. In 2 of those 3, skill and resource shortages actually were the very top response. In one of them, it was still security and compliance, but those 2 float around the top. But we've really seen in this year, more than in the past, skill and staffing challenges have risen higher in the challenges list. We always hear about, the tool ecosystem being complex, cost, it is expensive, but I mean, you're buying powerful software. It does cost something to obtain that. And complexity, I mean, this is a complex process. I mean, there's only so much you can do to reduce the complexity. You just have to embrace it. And then support for modernization is a concern. And, really still as often is, those sort of, some parts of the organization are sort of resistant to change. Not every organization has executives yet who even still value the scheduling function or understand it, but those are lesser challenges. So with this study, I really wanted to focus in the direction of orchestration. It's become a much hotter topic. And I really think that it's the backbone of modern automation. So these tools have really always been orchestrators, but we're really radically broadening what we mean by orchestration, where we intend to use it. And by no means is workload automation the only software class that's becoming part of this orchestration role. A lot of different areas where automation is used, orchestration thinking is becoming more and more common. But I'd say the biggest category of software that is in that role is the workload software we formerly used to call just workload automation. It's probably connected to more systems. We've talked about that in the past. It's integrated in more places. It's really involved in more critical business outcomes than some of the other more pointed forms of automation that also will have a role of orchestrating what they're automating. But I think this becomes one of the biggest orchestrators across the organization. So what do we mean by orchestration? Really, we've covered this before, but if you're not familiar with the differences here, we're really coordinating, managing, and aligning multiple automated workflows across and systems to ensure that they function cohesively. We're really focusing on connecting those processes. Now, again, you might say, hey, years ago, I had a massive job stream that did that. Yeah, that's true. We were orchestrating across multiple jobs, to be sure. We were not reaching as far to the end result business process. We were not really including some human in the process or human in the loop kinds of processes. And those are starting to become a focus. So the orchestration function has always been here, but we're reaching way farther with it now. So why is that critical? Well, it really increases visibility and control over complex independent workflows. But you notice visibility, in order to do that, you have to have that observability data. It reduces the inefficiencies caused by siloed automation efforts, and it supports scalability as automation use cases grow in complexity and volume. So without the orchestration role, it gets harder and harder to handle these very complex workflows. So it's really the connective tissue, and it connects IT and business workflows. It integrates those human tasks now and with the automated tasks, and it ensures it's just really holistic process management. So we're thinking about more end-to-end results, I would say. So WLA as an orchestrator of automation can really simplify managing multiple automation tool sets. And so this is another question that isn't directly about orchestration, but sort of indirectly it always has been. And again, we've been asking this for a number of years, and this data looks a lot like the trend lines on the other data, which is our organization could be made more efficient by consolidating scheduling and automation tools. And this can be achieved by wrapping other automation tools under the umbrella of workload automation. So for example, when RPA first took off, it was all the rage and it was used quite successfully to automate some pretty basic human processes, but there really was no overall orchestration of that. Now, since then, some of the RPA products have added some levels of orchestration, but I'll have a data point here in a minute. I believe I included that chart, but we've seen RPA orchestration inside of workload running 4 to 5% of all jobs now. It's the smallest job type, but it's an absolutely growing area. So that's one example of how you might consolidate a automation tool sets sort of under one umbrella. And that's really that role of workload sort of orchestrating and being aware of these other forms of automation and helping them along because it sees things from a much broader perspective. And you can see again that in 2020, only 75% felt that they needed to consolidate tools. Still a significant part of the market, but we've seen a 9% jump there over 5 years or 4 years. And again, look at the strongly agree, the top of the chart on the left there. The dark blue being the 2024 data. Each of these 3 surveys, we've seen a significant increase of folks to the very top, the strongly agree. We really need this tool set to be the orchestrator. So here, we did ask a very straightforward question. Orchestration is critical to achieving our digital transformation goals. We had 86% strongly agree or agree, and all of these donut charts I'm going to show you here, that darkest blue is the strongly agree. That next darkest shade of blue is the agree, and then the lesser shades there are the somewhat or don't agree kinds of questions. But you can see the bulk of the market is in those top 2 categories. And the chart on the right, then, what is missing or needs significant enhancement in your current WLA solution for broader orchestration use cases in your digital transformation initiatives. So if you're, yes, you understand orchestration is critical, what do you need more of to be better, right, is the second question here. AI capabilities for IT ops, top of the list, majority, over 51% in this case. Improved scalability and flexibility, the next highest one. Then we have, several that are relatively grouped together there. AI capabilities for citizen developers is third on the list, tied really with cloud native support. So as I said, cloud is not faded away. It's just, it was the new thing and the area we needed a lot of help for a number of years, but we've really matured what we can do there. It's still very important. I'm just not spending as much time studying it because I think we've solved a lot of that. Enhanced security and compliance features, always a concern, and there's always room for improvement there, it seems. Integration with third-party tools. We know that the vendors have been doing, many of them are running integration teams that produce 3, 4, 5 new integrations, every month. Every release, they're adding ability for you to do your own integrations. That continues to be a key concern. Data pipelines continue to mature and just get better and better. There's a lot that these tools are adding, and a lot of the help they're providing to the data pipeline. It's not just get the job run, make sure it finished. A lot of it is the orchestration capabilities and the coordination that is required to bring all of that data to where it needs to be, in the form it needs to be, when it needs to be there. And again, RPA automation, important for a subset of the market, about 27%, so we're in that 25 to 30% range, are actually assisting their RPA with the workload and orchestration. So we also said, who's shifting? Do you feel like you're actually shifting from workload automation to enterprise-wide orchestration? And this is the first time I've asked this question. We have 80% who agree or strongly agree. So that's a significant part of the market who is expanding their orchestration thinking. How is your organization's WA transforming from traditional job scheduling to enterprise-wide orchestration? So again, how are you doing that? 80% think that they're shifting. What are the steps that allow you to do that? WLA manages event-driven and real-time workloads. Its historic role, 43%. I'm there. It provides enterprise-wide visibility and control. Those two are at the top. And that really, again, that word visibility being in there, right? We want to orchestrate. To orchestrate, you have to have some knowledge of what's happening. And this is where observability is really becoming key to workload. WLA automates security workflows and compliance checks. So this is a place where, I'm broadening the thinking, right? I'm aware of my compliance status and my security status. I'm orchestrating workflows that cross business units. I'm integrating AI and ML driven workflows and keeping those data sets fresh. If there's rework that has to be done to those algorithms to keep them tracking correctly, those are things that are getting automated. ML ops is something that I've been tracking in the radar report, and a lot of the key products in this market have really leaned into not just analytics around the workload, but the processes to drive that machine learning data, keep those algorithms on track, having a best practice and cycle around that. WLA integrates data ops. It also orchestrates serverless and containerized applications. So in some ways, it's not doing that directly, but it's working with some of the other tools. Oftentimes we'll start a process with workload automation, then a specialized tool set will come in and do it more thoroughly, and workload will step back. It doesn't step away. It just plays more of the orchestration role while that specialized tool set really does the deep dive. So a lot of stuff with containerized apps is happening in Kubernetes, but there is awareness, and what workload needs to know in the grander scheme is still connected for that. We're expanding WA to move to more departments beyond IT operations. And, we've seen that in increasing types of users and whatnot. So that's where the rubber meets the road on, what do you really do to increase that orchestration thinking? We're expanding orchestration to manage complex workflows across environments. So 84%. And here again, it starts in that monitoring and observability category. 59%. How do you, this is how do you achieve it, right? How does your organization use WA to orchestrate automation tools? Monitoring observability is at the top of the list. Leveraging generative AI, again, in part to, understand and make decisions about what's going on with those workflows. Coordinating across platforms, basic job scheduling doesn't go away. It's still important. More around self-service automation, more with the integration of the CI/CD pipelines. We know it's playing a big role in DevOps and release management, and so on. So a lot of the similar themes, but this question was specifically phrased about increasing orchestration, and the link to AI and observability is right there at the top of that list. So let's talk a little bit more about observability. It's becoming more important because of the complexity of systems. So here we said multi-cloud automation requires better observability and AI-based decisions. Again, the focus here in that complex cloud environment, 86% agree or strongly agree. When we look at so how do you achieve that question? Leveraging cloud-native orchestration tools that the hyperscalers provide directly. I mean, again, workload doesn't have to do everything natively. Here, we're using things like AWS step functions, Azure Logic Apps, and a whole host of things in each of those environments. They're okay tools. They always aren't as complete as the workload, and they are limited to their environment. And since many people are living across multiple environments, those tools do need to be augmented with something that can see everything and live across all those platforms. And that's really the rising orchestration role Workload is playing. Using AI-driven orchestration solutions to optimize workload orchestration. So we're bringing that intelligence in. We're adopting multi-cloud management platform like Morpheus or VMware to handle orchestration and workload distribution. So again, other tools that are being wrapped under and sort of directed by workload. In some, that's where it's rising up more to the orchestration road and necessarily isn't doing the detailed automation itself. There's still places where it does. There's other places where it's engaging other tools. So again, the idea that, we have to have observability to really see across all those environments and understand them. Observability is key to optimizing our automated workflows. 87% strongly agree. And how are they achieving that? Really, it's centralized dashboard for monitoring and workload performance. It's the real-time alerting based on workload behavior. It's the integration with these observability platforms to collect the data. So Workload itself is not an observability platform. It is a consumer of that data so that it can act on these workflows, and it's a source of that data about these workflows. So, it's providing data into the pool and it's pulling data out to do its job. It is, Workload itself is not an observability platform, but it is a big user of that data, and it is also a source of that data. Telemetry and analysis to detect potential SLA violations. So, some of this additional observed data is being added into what we already had around predictive analytics for workload for the job itself, but we're starting to understand more about the underlying environments, and with AI, we can act on that and improve the situation. But really, for 17%, observability is not yet integrated into their strategy, so not everybody is there. Real quick, we'll talk about WLA users. These are trends that we've seen. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these slides, but they're in here because we do have the slide decks that are available. Increasing number of users, broader functional roles, increasing developer involvement. We've seen these trends for a while. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. The IT folks are the biggest, but that's a broad list of roles and functions. Data scientists continue to rise up. We have business execs at about 21%. Development is growing, 22% are developers. And really, this connection to the development team is a big part of this. So this is a question I've asked before. You can see the trend line. We're really asking, how involved is your developers? The blue group is the most positive, where the dev people really see the value of WLA. The green group, they're just sort of, yeah, it's a good tool, but it's mostly really for ops. And the red group is, yeah, it does. Developers really have no business with this software, right? You can see the dev positive group rising from 25% to 33%, both the other groups declining. What I have found is the more that the developers are aware of the software, the more they will leverage it. And really the first place to start is around the DevOps processes. The other area that users are changing pretty rapidly is citizen developers. So this is the first time I've asked this question, but what is the role of citizen developers in contributing to building automation use cases in your organization? Again, from they're not allowed to do anything all the way up to citizen developers are heavily involved. The two blue groups being the most mature, the green group is sort of, they're moderately contributing. That biggest group, 36%, that big red bar there, citizen developers are allowed to experiment, but they have limited involvement. So, what you can see there summarized in the pie chart is the majority are still not ready to turn citizen developers loose. Those that allow significant contributions from citizen developers is about 28%. Another 20%, are flirting with it. The rest are still unsure. The low code, no code thing, I think we need more AI to make this work better. I mean, I think we don't have the skilled resources and we don't have the staff to automate everything we can. We're going to have to enable these self-service people, but this is still, sort of in its early stages. AI is growing rapidly. 81% agree or strongly agree. I think, we're seeing first around repetitive tasks and freeing up more time for strategic work, enhancing collaboration between citizen developers and IT. I think in many cases, I'm beginning to kind of morph my thinking to citizen development, maybe less about the final product and more about getting them to state their needs. But once you understand the requirements, you're probably still going to have to layer in some more engineering resources to really bring that to full benefit. But you can see the other ways that folks are expecting AI to improve this whole function. AI and intelligent orchestration. it's really driving that importance for WA to incorporate AI enhanced orchestration capabilities. 91% think it's important or extremely important. And this is how they are leveraging it within their strategy. This doesn't mean they're actually using it yet. Some of this, this is their strategy for automation. They're aware of what the vendors are bringing to market. So first and foremost, the most mature part of that is AI to analyze data and provide recommendations. We've had the machine learning stuff and the predictive analytics for quite some time. That's pretty mature. We're now getting to the point where we can actually start to make some intelligent decisions along the way. That may be a recommendation rather than a full, self-heal automation. We don't quite trust it that much yet. Use AI to generate content for end users. So in the job stream itself, some of the outputs are augmented with AI, improving orchestration across multi-cloud environments. Again, this is more where it's involved in the observability and acting on that data. So you can see a number of areas where folks are or hope to be utilizing AI. And, I think there's a lot of missteps around AI. There's things we think it'll help with, it doesn't. And then there's areas where we're surprised that we didn't expect it to help. And a lot of it, though, is doing exactly what we expected. And I think, there's still a lot of experimentation here, both in the user groups as well as the vendors with what they're trying to add. There'll be a wave of things coming. A lot of it will be beneficial. Some of it will be, won't hit the mark. But this is really cutting edge stuff, right? And there's going to be things that don't pay off like we expected, and then there's others that are going to pay off more than we expected. But key chart here, what time frame do you expect generative AI to significantly impact your WLA strategy? And again, the question is not phrased, when will it actually, when is it, but when do you expect it in your strategy? So the deployment could be later than that, but there is planning and activity going on. For 18%, it already has, and they're running things, and they have things that are near term. Another 24% within the next 6 months, 28% 6 to 12 months. So you can see, we're really, the bulk of the market is 6 months to 2 years away. But there is one, sizable group that's already taking advantage of this. But if you're not planning for this, you can see what your peers have in mind. And the next year to 2 years are going to tell us a lot. Really, 83% do find value in AI to identify issues and root cause. It's the most common use case. So you can see 83% do agree or strongly agree that it helps in resolve automation issues before they impact business outcomes. It's really improving resource utilization, optimizing job scheduling. A lot of it is the things we're doing in orchestration are the things you see bubbling up here, as well as the benefit AI can bring. AI-driven insights are central to our automation strategy. Another big group there, 81%. And really, how is it integrated to improve orchestration? Predictive analytics, again, at the top, because, again, it's the most mature. Really, anomaly detection and identifying bottlenecks, improve real-time dynamic recommendations. All of those, we're seeing almost half of the respondents in those areas. These are the big areas that AI is really impacting and expected to continue to impact. So that's the survey results I chose to highlight here in the webinar. The report, which will be available from all of the sponsors, covers maybe a broader set of the survey, so I would encourage you to get a hold of that. Also, I have talked about some aspects of this in my podcast, and I'm going to plug it real quick here. If you're not aware, I'm doing about every 2 weeks, we release a podcast. I have a co-host, Tom O'Rourke. He's a professional in the automation industry, used to be a product manager for one of the big Workload tools. He's got a lot of IT experience. Tom and I together are covering a lot of automation topics. So we did actually do our most recent episode was about some of the results in this study as well. So you can get more there if you want. The 2D barcode there will get you to the Spotify home of the podcast, but we're distributing it through all those different sites. And if you just search on the name, you can find it in your favorite distribution. So I hope you'll come listen to us there. But with that, I'm going to turn it back to Raleigh for the Q&A.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, definitely check that podcast out. It's great. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the questions, but before I do, I did want to remind the audience that you will be receiving a follow-up email from EMA that will include the on-demand playback. And if you're interested in learning more about the report, I will also include a link. And as Dan said, you can also check out the sponsor sites for the report as well. So getting into the questions, Dan, the first one is, given the rapid rise of AI and workload automation and orchestration, what do you see as the biggest challenge organizations will face in adopting AI-driven orchestration over the next 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, well, we did have the challenges chart up there. I think skilled resources is a big one. Having the right data to train the AI and how the models are brought in will be a challenge. And then, and even talking with some of the sponsor organizations of this, there was a lot of interest in what AI capabilities are people expecting. Really, how do you prioritize that of all the things you could do? I don't know that the vendors all have a clear vision of there's just so many areas that we can improve. So there's some obvious ones and they're focused there. But just, where do you begin and how do you build from that? We saw that predictive analytics is highly in there. Stepping up in a lot of cases, the AI might arrive before you have the observed data to take the actions. So, I think in conjunction with planning for AI and wondering when that's going to happen, bringing the observability capabilities up to speed so that you can feed that data to your workload system once the AI is there is as much of a challenge as waiting on the AI or understanding how and where to deploy the AI in the first place. So for me, I think what's slowing people down is some of the most powerful AI stuff is yet to be delivered by the software vendors. I know the product roadmaps of many. I know a lot of them have some things out the door. A lot of stuff is coming. So the best options to help you are not yet available, but they're right on the horizon. So part of it is thinking about not being ready when that's delivered. I think is going to hold people up. Get your people trained, get your observability game up, so that when these tools start being released, the more powerful ones, you're really ready to take them. I think it's that staffing and data are the two things that are going to hold people up.
Good insights. Thanks, Dan. The next question is, you mentioned that 80% of organizations are shifting WLA to enterprise-wide orchestration. For those just starting that journey, what's the first step you'd recommend?
Well, I think, first of all, how broad do you approach workload automation? Are you still living in it's predominantly a calendar-based scheduler? Have you morphed to leveraging the event triggers and the other capabilities? Do you have the predictive analytics capabilities deployed, staff trained? You're collecting and keeping the right kind of data. I mean, there's a lot of things in the early going before you're really ready to think as the broadest of orchestration. So you might be orchestrating a lot of tasks because you have, a massive job stream that has thousands of job steps in it. But, in many cases, those are probably, 800 repetitive jobs, like in file transfers or something. And then another, group of tasks that kind of carry it, across a number of steps in the process. That's light orchestration, but where are you at in really reaching out to business processes? So, first you need to have that foundational capability of predictive analytics and really be using the more advanced features of these tools and how they can trigger events, the prerequisites, and just thinking more holistically about a process. And then, it's important to walk before you run. Pick a small area, expand it, learn from it, and continue to think more broadly about what's the ultimate outcome behind this job, and what can I do beyond just knowing the completion status of it. And if there are other jobs that are related to this that aren't currently part of this job stream, but with a couple of human in the loop steps, can the two be linked together, right? In the past, we might have done, here's a simple job, it's a file transfer. Now the humans are going to do a couple of things with that data before the next process might kick off, but the two were defined very independently of each other. They can be linked now if you bring those human in the loop steps together and think about bigger end-to-end processes. That's really how the orchestration starts to spread.
Thank you, Dan. The next question is, with the rise of citizen developers and automation, how do you strike the right balance between empowering business users and maintaining governance and security?
Yeah, this is 4, 5, 6 years ago, everyone was lauding citizen developers and low code, no code, and democratizing IT. And we've achieved some of that. We've achieved more in data sharing through dashboarding and whatnot in this class of software. But I'll tell you, I follow a lot of RPA groups on LinkedIn, and I still use the RPA term. I mean, they've gone through several name iterations as they've tried to bring more orchestration and more AI into the fold. So they've gone, they went to intelligent automation, and now, you hear a lot of talk about agentic AI and agentic automation. And yeah, those agents are coming along. There's still a lack of orchestration there. So, just as we think about where we're heading with the software, it's becoming that broader thinking, I think, of understanding where WLA should actually pull back in favor of a more specific tool, but still stay involved at that level. What's happening specifically is in that RPA space, they're not there's not a lot of enthusiasm for citizen developers. Actually, they experimented with it. There's always challenges when you bring non-engineering trained people to bear to define logic flows. They can learn the syntax. If you simplify it, they can define the happy path of what they want to happen. But if you're not a trained engineer, you don't think about all the exception handling. You don't necessarily handle all the edge cases. You're not aware of change management, compliance, and security things. So there is still, in fact, those that have experimented more with the citizen development have become maybe even more skeptical. I think AI is what's going to really turn that around. We can let the citizen developers log what it is that they want to log, define what needs to get done, but then we need some way to bring the guardrails around security and compliance and change management to bear. And we need to bring engineer thinking around the edge cases and the exception handling. I think the AI can be trained to fill in those gaps a bit. So I think we have a ways to go before citizen development really takes off, but we're seeing centers of excellence expand and become bottlenecks because you cannot have a centralized function saying grace over everything you want to automate and achieve it. So we're seeing COEs develop subgroups. I didn't include a lot of that data here, but it's probably going to get covered in the report when we get that finished. So think about what's missing for you to be comfortable with citizen developers, not how do I avoid it. Not everyone's ready to roll it out. We got to build up some more support around it. But if we're ultimately going to keep increasing the reach of automation, we've got to enable more folks to help define it. But that is really still an area where there's a lot of learning and a lot of new features to surround it that still need to come to bear before I think we'll see the bulk of users push in that direction.
Great insights, Dan. Thanks for answering those questions. And I wanted to thank our audience for taking time out of your schedule to join us today. Be on the lookout for that email from EMA, and I hope we'll see you at a future EMA research webinar. Thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.